Hi, this is Alan Cornell. I'm speaking to you today because I want to announce that I'm going to be offering the NLP Practitioner Credentialing Training starting early in 2012. And as part of this announcement, I've decided that I'm going to be sending out a series of short videos that will offer some real introduction to how some of the techniques work. So we'll get to that in the first one in just a minute. But one of the things I want to share with you is that I'm very excited about doing this training. I'm excited for a lot of different reasons. And I'm grateful for being able to do this training because it's a great privilege for me to be able to work with an exciting group of people who are in a learning community who are interested and curious about how life works and how to help other people and how to become better themselves. And I'm also want to say that I'm very grateful for the great fortune I've had with the teachers that I've had over the years. And I've been really lucky to have some great teachers and to have learned quite a bit. And I'm excited about being able to share what I've learned over all these years and through my study with other people and through my practice. Now I want to invite you in this training because it's going to be really fun. It's absolutely going to be fun. It's going to be practical. It'll be useful. And it's going to be exciting to be learning this material together. So I'm going to send out a series of short videos that are going to demonstrate 4 of the different patterns that we use in NLP. And what I want to invite you to do is, if you find this interesting and intriguing, to give me a call, or if you're really excited, you can just go register. But give me a call and discuss why, then how this training would fit for you in your life. And if there's people you know who you would like to join you in the training, please forward this on to them. Help them, because this is how trainings usually fill up. People spread the word, and I'm asking you to give me out a hand in that way. And for those of you who've already taken the training, and a lot of you have in the past, I want to let you know that I'm going to be offering it to people who want to retake the training, because it's been a number of years for a lot of you, at actually a half-price deduction. And that's a very exciting thing, and it would be nice to have some people who have some experience and to review and to revisit some of the patterns and some of the ideas I've developed about how to teach these patterns in the last 10 or 12 years since the last time I taught this practitioner training. Now today, I want to tell you a story. I want to start off by telling you a story. And the story I want to tell you is really the basis for why NLP is so interesting and compelling for me to learn. And that was after my first 2-day training with Bandler and Grinder. And I think it was back in 1977. When I went to a 2-day workshop, Friday, Saturday with them. And they, at that time, that's all they taught. And they were teaching a lot of their patterns in those 2 days. And I came home from that training and returned to work that week. And one of the things I noticed and I realized this in retrospect, that I was working in a family service agency, and I was as a therapist for individuals and families. And a certain percentage of the clients who came in, we would connect immediately. There'd be no problem, no time lapse, and maybe 50% of the people I saw, there'd be an instant connection. And maybe for about 25% of the people who came in, I'd have to work at it, but after a short period of time, or maybe a little longer, that connection would occur. But I also noticed there was this group of people, and I didn't know quite how to characterize them, and I hadn't figured it out, that no matter what I did, there just didn't seem to be any connection. We just missed each other. And one of the things that happened immediately after just 2 days of training was I started practicing and utilizing some of the patterns we had learned, and I realized that I was able to gain instant rapport with every person that walked in my office by just varying my own behavior and language in really simple ways. So that's why what I want to talk to you about today. What I want to talk to you about today is about rapport. And rapport is a fancy word we use for, and when I think about rapport, what I mean is rapport is when it occurs when two people have a sense and a feeling of connection with each other. And one of the things we teach in NLP is that all communication has structure. And one of the things we believe is that the structure of communication is more significant than the content. So typically, when people are attempting to connect with someone else, how they try to do that is through content. If you both have kids who are in college, you talk about that. If you are both interested in a particular kind of literature, you talk about that. If you both like basketball, you talk about that. And this is one way of connecting. But there's a much more significant and subtle way of creating connection that's instantaneous when you practice it. And that is by matching the structure of someone else's expression. Now, the structure of rapport is matching and pacing. So when we do things to vary our own behavior to match how someone is expressing themselves, instant rapport. What's occurring when we do that is when you do what you need to do to join someone and how they're expressing themselves, and I'll talk about some ways to do that, is that you're joining them in their model of the world, rather than expecting them to join you. And that's what before I had this training, that's what I was relying on, is for them to come and join me. I was able to vary without giving up any of my personal integrity. How I express myself, typically non-verbally and extraverbally. Extraverbally is not the words of what I'm saying or the content, but the tone of voice, the tempo, things like that, phrasing. That I would match people in how they express themselves, and this would create instant rapport. So basically, the structure of rapport is matching and pacing, and I'm going to give you a couple of things that I'd like you to try out for yourselves. Don't believe me, believe the results that you get. When we teach rapport, the easiest thing that people learn to do, and it's the thing they often rely on, though it isn't the most effective, and to teach you the most effective methods for matching and pacing someone, creating rapport, is a little more sophisticated than I can share in this short video, and we'll be covering it in the workshop in great detail with great opportunity to practice, is to match someone's posture. Is when someone walks in, they sit down, a great way to join them is to sit the same way that they're sitting. So if they sit up, you sit up. If they're leaning one way, you lean the same way. If they cross their legs, you cross your legs. So one of the things I would like you to do is to go out there and start to notice that when people are communicating with you, whether they're sitting or standing, they have a certain posture, there's a certain way they hold themselves, and begin to vary your behavior so that you can match their posture, their physiology in a sense. And notice whether you don't get a stronger feeling of connection yourself when you do that. So that's one way, is to match posture. That's an easy way that you can practice without a lot of instruction from me. Now the second way is a little more sophisticated and takes a little more practice, and it's for those of you who can actually hear things well. So all you musicians are going to like this. And that is to listen to the tone and tempo of people's speech. When you hear people speaking, and it's easier to recognize when you're listening to a foreign language, people actually are very musical in their voices. They have a certain rhythm when they speak. They use certain pitches when they speak. And if you can begin to hear those patterns when someone's speaking and vary your speaking to not exactly, but to approach how they're speaking. So if someone comes into my office and they're speaking real fast, I want to speak a little faster than I normally do with them initially. If someone comes into my office and speaks real slowly, I want to speak a little more slowly than I usually do in order to match. I want to match their voice tones as well, the pitch that they use. And one of the things that's important when you do that is not to overdo it. Because if you overdo it, if someone walks in and you either match them exactly or you exaggerate a little bit, they'll feel like you're mocking them. So you want to understate it. And I have a little story I want to tell about this. Back in 1981, I co-sponsored a workshop that John Grinder was teaching. And it was in Raleigh. And it was a 5-day workshop. And I noticed that by the second day that John had a very slight Southern accent, very understated. And this is really surprising to me. And I went up to him and asked him about it. And of course, if you knew John, you know that he was raised in Dearborn, Michigan, and he lived out in California. So a Southern accent was not something he had adopted in the course of living. And I asked him about that, and what he said to me is he said that he just tends to adopt and to match the group that he's in, but that it's important to understate it, and not because otherwise people feel like you're mocking them. So what I like to do is to practice those two things and do them one at a time. You know, go and start matching posture with people that you choose to be in rapport with. And notice if you don't feel some sense of connection, or if you have some experience of them behaving with you in a way that reflects that they feel like they're in rapport with you. And then begin to listen for voice tone and tempo, and begin to vary your voice tone and tempo in those situations where you want to, when you want to connect with someone where it's crucial, either in business or in your personal life. And notice if this doesn't work well for you. So, one more story I want to tell you about before I let you go, and that is when we went to, about the power of taking the time to establish rapport. Years ago, I co-led a corporate training, an internal corporate training for a company up in Pennsylvania that actually no longer exists because they got merged and absorbed. And the training was for their internal trainers. So we were training their trainers and using NLP techniques. And when we first started, we started teaching them rapport in the first set of days. I think we had 3 days of training. And then we sent them out into their lives. And when they came back, the first day, they were all real excited. And it was an interesting training because it was an old-time culture and all the trainers were men, which hopefully has changed since then. And my co-trainer was a woman, so she had a comment about that, understandably, and so did I. And when we sent them out to practice these rapport techniques, these techniques for matching and pacing, they were very excited because what they noticed is that they were getting along better with their wives than they had in years and maybe decades, because who they practiced on was their wives. And they were really excited about that. And I can't blame them, because they were practicing rapport with their wives, not because they didn't like them, but because they did like them and they did love them. And they felt more connected with their wives because of it. And it happened just after a couple of days of training. It was actually really pretty hilarious. And they were all pretty jokey about the whole thing. So I want to invite you to go out there, and if you think this would be useful to anyone you know, please forward this video on to someone who would benefit from it. And if you're curious and interested about the training, you can click on the link to my website at www.alanconell.com. And I think we're going to attach the information to this video, so you should probably have that. And if you can give me a phone call if you want to talk about the possibility of you joining me. And I want to hope that you go out and enjoy your life, and I appreciate your taking the time. Thanks. Take care.